thanks so much for joining us. Surf Nation, Football Focus, really excited to have you on.
Gary, it's so cool to be here. I'm really excited to be speaking with you. Always enjoy our conversations, and even cooler, if I may say so, to be here with you with relation to surf as well. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, the surf stuff is so exciting, obviously, from knowing you for a number of years, knowing your work, to get you involved in the side of Surf Select, where there are so many psychological components that go alongside the football, and looking at that and saying, well, let's bring in the best in the world at trying to help our players. I really, really believe that you are that. So let's talk first of all about the objectives of what we're trying to do in the next couple of months with the players.
Sure. Well, before we get started, I thought you were going to say to me that the best in the world wasn't available. So, Dan, we've pumped for you, which would be no problem at all, because I don't think there is a best in the world in this area. But I look, all I can say is I'm so passionate about the mental side of soccer. I've been involved in it now for 20 years, working with the very best players, and players for all ages and levels. As you can hear, I'm English, so I do a lot of work. I'm blessed to do a lot of work in the Premier League on the men's side of the game, the WSL and the women's side of the game. Over in the US, where you are, do a lot of work with MLS players and also NWSL players, right the way down to the youngest players. So I'm passionate about players of all ages and all levels having really, really simple sports psychology or psychological tools, mindset tools that they can use to help them be in what I call your high performance mindset. That's my passion. I want every player to know what they have to do to help them be in their high performance mindset for the whole game, no matter what. Doesn't matter who you play, where you play, when you play, what you're playing in. I want you to have the capacity, the capability to compete in your high performance mindset. And look, that requires, as I've mentioned, very, very simple tools and techniques. And that's what we're going to be working on in our sessions. You know, my plan is to introduce players to some of the techniques I've written about over the years in my books, Soccer Tough, Soccer Tough 2, Soccer Tough. I was very proud that Gareth Bale a few years ago said that Soccer Tough, my first book, changed his life. I don't think it changed his life, Gary, but it was very nice of him to say so. Sold a few books off the back of that. But I'm going to be introducing everybody to the tools and techniques that Gareth Bale uses and my Premier League clients use and the NWSL players use as well. Techniques like game face, squashing ants, match script, using controllers, self-talk controller, body controller. I'm passionate about bringing this alive for players, and so I'm going to be doing so with lots of videos from the very best players talking about their mindset. I'm going to be breaking down what I do with the best players with relation to these tools and techniques, and teach players how to use them, when to use them, and what to specifically do when they're competing. So there's a whole raft of things for you there, but that's our aim.
Brilliant. Yeah, we set out when we're putting this together and planning it, and I give you a little bit overview about, again, Surf Select, the program at Surf Select, and we basically looked at focusing on two areas that were your suggestions, that were player engagement and mental activation. Can you give us an oversight of what both of those are and where they sit in the kind of game day experience?
Yeah, sure. And I think specifically drilling in, you know, I love the way you've drilled in there in terms of what these tools and techniques try to help players do. I think there's two things here. There's attention, a focus of attention, and there's, as you've mentioned that name, activation, which might be unfamiliar to players, but attention, as the name suggests, you know, I honestly believe, Gary, that the most important mental skill is to focus your attention when you play. There's so many things outside of us that can capture our attention and distract us away from what we should be paying attention to. And you know what? Probably more impactfully, there's many things inside of us, thoughts, emotions, feelings, that tend to captivate our attention and distract us away from what we need to be focusing on. So I'm going to be helping players with, again, very simple psychological mental techniques that they can use to focus their attention effectively, number one. And what goes hand in hand with attention is this word activation, a new word for many, but very simply, mental energy. The very best players not only play with a physical energy, a physicality, they also have a high mental energy, a mental intensity, if you like. They are constantly alert and ready, alert and ready, alert and ready for the next action. And so again, I'm going to introduce, and this is where it links in with techniques like game face and using self-talk controller and squashing your ants, your automatic negative thoughts. I link in these two skills, mental skills of attention and activation, with the mental techniques of game face and match script and squashing ants and using controllers. So they go hand in hand. But ultimately, whenever I sit down with a player, whenever I get to work with a group of players, I want them to be the very best that they can be with relation to their focus of attention, because I know that's a secret sauce in terms of getting the most from your ability. And I want them to be able to activate themselves. I don't want them to succumb to despondency and lethargy and complacency. I don't want emotions like anxiety and anger and frustration to damage their game. I want them to retain the right level of mental energy. Activation is the word for them. So we're going to be addressing all these things in as simple a way as possible. And last thing to say here, I wish everything, we're going to talk about everything in a simple way. It's not always easy to do. Okay, there's a difference between simple and easy. So I'm going to make this super, super simple, bring it alive with videos, bring it alive with examples, bring it alive with very simple tools and techniques. But then it's for everybody to go away and work on these. And you have to work on these in every activity, in every session, and focus on them in every game. There's a difference between simple and easy.
Love it. Love it. We've also opened it up for the parents, obviously, for the players as well, families to come in. How can a parent kind of get involved in this process?
Hugely so. And I actually think it's the one area that's the healthiest for a parent to be involved in, because it doesn't really require, once you know about attention and activation, once you know about a game face, match script, squashing ants, using controllers, these are things that you can reinforce. You don't have to have the knowledge of Jose Mourinho or Serena Wiegman, the English national team coach. You don't have to have the same soccer knowledge as them to be able to reinforce these simple mental skills and mental techniques. So this is the wonderful thing about the mental side of the game. I think parents are in a wonderful position to reinforce these ideas before soccer, after soccer. It can enhance conversation about soccer around the dinner table, right? It can be incorporated in the car journey to training, on the way back from training. So there's so many things a parent of a young soccer player can do to reinforce the mental side of the game. And I think the last thing to say here is it creates, and I'm going to give you another little bit of psychological jargon here, Gary, okay, shared mental model, a shared mental model. A mental model, okay, attention, activation, these are mental models, and it's shared. You know, so if the whole family is talking about game faces, if the whole family is talking about squashing ants, using a match script, paying attention, executing with an optimal mental activation, then, you know, that reinforcement is critical, because if everybody is speaking the same language, that gives you the best chance to be the best that you can possibly be. So that is a critical part of this parental involvement. I love the fact that Surf are getting parents involved. That's brilliant.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And then we're finishing off the kind of education series with the coaches session as well. I mean, with coaches having so many diverse personalities and so many people at different stages of it, I mean, how important is it for them to get upskilled, or how can they get upskilled in dealing with that?
Hugely so. And it's let's start with attention and activation. it doesn't matter how long you've been coaching for. You've been a human being for however long you've been alive, right? So you've always dealt in attention and activation, mental energy. So you've always been doing this stuff. It's just becoming a little bit more educated on this. It's just considering these with relation to soccer. It's considering these with relation to your session planning, injecting or incorporating them into your session design, injecting or incorporating them into your coach behaviors and your interactions with your players. Hey, look, I always say that players are the most powerful psychologists in many respects, but they're only powerful when, as a coach, you incorporate these ideas into your training sessions. When you give players the opportunity to huddle up, lead each other, engage in teamwork around things like attention, activation, game face, squashing ants, using match script, and so on and so forth. So this is what I'm going to be focusing on with coaches, helping them. They do psychology in their role every single second anyway. Can we help them be the best that they can be in their delivery of psychology? Well, we're going to give them the language, the tools, the techniques to help them be the best that they can be from this perspective.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Okay, last one for you. And obviously you've a wide range of experience within the game. What have you seen over the last 10 years? I mean, sometimes it gets overlooked that the players that are at the highest level, we see the gym pictures on Instagram and you don't really see what they're doing psychologically. How much, in your experience, is going on either individually with players getting extra support or coaches getting extra help in this area? How has the landscape changed over the last 5-10 years?
It's changed enormously and it's constantly changing. I mean, I suppose the obvious place to start here is the open-mindedness to people like myself in the discipline of sports psychology. I don't think anybody has ever denied that soccer includes a great deal of psychology, whether it's the psychology of learning and training, whether it's the psychology of competing on game day, whether for coaches it's the psychology of how do I engage my players, how do I help them engage as individuals and as teammates. What does this mean to me as a coach? So I don't think anybody denies that, but more recently, and I suppose, to use your time frame over the last decade, especially with the proliferation of information on the internet, podcasts and things like this, you've got so many great platforms now that are discussing this stuff. And so minds open even wider, and coaches are far more curious. And I'm blessed to be at the very highest level. The last 2 seasons, I've worked with Feyenoord with Arne Slot, who's now had some success at Liverpool. And I can assure you, him and his coaches at that level didn't think for 1 second that they knew it all. They were very open to having conversations. They didn't take on board everything that I said. They asked good questions. They pushed back when they felt was necessary. But at the same time, they were open to learning and improving their coaching practice. And that's really the same for every single coach now. No coach out there who wants to be the very best that they can be has a completely closed mind. So there's an open-mindedness now that I think is a consequence of all kinds of factors. And I suppose the last thing to say is the global competition. Everybody wants to be the very best that they can be in our sport, and that's a great place to be, but that means that landscape is more demanding. So if you want to be a coach of the kind of teams that maybe once you dreamt of, then it can be really, really important, very useful for you to learn the kind of knowledge that sports psychology has to offer. And not least, just for you to be the very best that you can be for your players, from a performance perspective, an engagement perspective, a learning perspective, a well-being perspective, a mental health perspective. All these things are thrown in for you as a coach. It's a tough discipline. It's demanding, but there are great tools and techniques, philosophies and approaches that you can utilize that sports psychology has to offer.
Brilliant. Dan, great way to finish. Excited to see you and get started on this with the Surf Select players. July 9th is our first session. So thank you so much for doing it, and welcome to Surf Select.
Thank you, Gary. Looking forward to it. Excited.